Technology. Introduction. Blockchain is essentially a distributed database of records or a public ledger of all transactions or digital events that have been executed and shared among participating parties. So, in a blockchain, we can also say that it is a kind of distributed consensus. So, a blockchain is basically categorized in a distributed consensus. It is nothing but essentially a distributed databases of records. So, the operations which are called as ledgers. So, it is a distributed ledger implementation. So, a bank also maintains the ledger of different people A, B, C having different money values in their accounts, and the bank maintains the ledger centrally. How this particular ledger is to be made in a decentralized manner? So, this is to be achieved using a distributed consensus, and blockchain is the technology which will basically maintain this kind of distributed ledger or a distributed records. So, a blockchain is essentially a distributed database of records or a public ledger of all the transactions or digital events that have been executed and shared among the participating parties. So, it is not only one, it is not maintained at centrally located place, but it is to be maintained in a distributed manner. How it is all done? Through a blockchain that we are going to discuss this new technology, which is also called a disruptive technology in this part of the discussion. It involves the concept of distributed consensus, which will basically see that there are different impossibility results, and how in spite of this impossibility, this particular technology, which is called a blockchain, is going to make it possible, impossibility to a possibility, to see in this part of the discussion. So, each transaction in a public ledger is verified by a consensus of majority of the participant in the system. That is why it is called basically the distributed consensus. So, the distributed ledger will be implemented with the help of the distributed consensus of the participating parties. So, a blockchain contains a certain and verifiable records of every single transaction ever made. So, to use a basic analogy, it is easy to steal a cookie from a cookie jar kept in a secluded place than stealing a cookie from a cookie jar kept in a marketplace being observed by thousands of the people. Meaning, in the sense, there are two models of security. The existing model of security employs a particular security provision to secure some resources from unauthorized access, and this particular security mechanisms have to be implemented in a very strong manner, and it requires a lot of overheads, and it has to be maintained centrally. The other model says that it is a decentralized security model. So, the untrusted people, set of untrusted people will be given the access to these resources, and resources are being basically monitored by the untrusted people, and this is another model of security. So, if let us say that cookie is placed over here and is being secured, nobody can take, the security will ensure it. Similarly, the cookies are put in a public, so public is watching, so then also basically they will witness and nobody can steal then in that case. So, this is another model, and we are going to see how this particular model will be useful to implement the distributed consensus, and how the blockchain is going to implement it. So, Bitcoin is the most popular example of a blockchain technology. It is a disruptive technology. Means the way the banks are operating with the help of a single centralized secure system, it is going to basically provide an alternative wherein identities are also anonymous, and the technologies which are called as a distributed consensus is basically used in the blockchain technologies. So we are going to see, and we have already seen that Bitcoin has successfully implemented with the help of a blockchain all security provisions which is otherwise possible only through the centralized banks, now is possible using the blockchain technology to realize it. So it is the most controversial, that is the Bitcoin, since it helps enable the multi-billion dollar global market of anonymous transactions without any governmental control. Hence, it has to deal with the number of regulatory issues involving the national and financial institutions. Blockchain technology itself is non-controversial, has worked flawlessly over the years and is being successfully applied to the financial, non-financial applications. So blockchain distributed consensus model is the most important invention. Now, so that is why we are discussing this particular, that is technology, that is called a blockchain technology, which is not only going to be used in a financial institution but as well as non-financial institutions wherever there is a centralized system. So current digital economy is based on the reliance on trusted authority. So wherever such kind of scenarios are there, this particular blockchain technology will going to solve the problem that we live in a life precariously in a digital world by relying on a third entity for security and privacy of our digital assets. And blockchain technology comes into an handy. So it has the potential to revolutionize the digital world by enabling a distributed consensus where each and every online transaction, past, present, involving the digital assets can be verified at any time in the future. So the distributed consensus and anonymity are the two important characteristics of a blockchain technology that we are going to see here in this particular discussion. Now another application is in the form of a digital smart contracts. So the advantage of blockchain technology outweighs the regulatory issues and technical challenges. One key emerging use case of blockchain is smart contracts. Smart property is another related concept. Controlling the ownership of the property or asset via the blockchain using smart contracts is another non-financial kind of application. So financial and non-financial applications, financial institutions and banks no longer see the blockchain technology as a threat to the traditional business model. Non-financial application opportunities are also endless. So let us see this particular example in a traditional system. Here the bank has to say that, or has to verify the flow of the transaction from A to B. Yes, he has sent the money. So that is being done in a traditional transactions where this is the trusted third party, that is a bank or a payment gateway, which basically both these partners they trust or everyone else trust, and that is the existence of the bank is involved. Transactions which is happening, how this is to be broken up, how two people can communicate or can transact without using the third party of a blockchain technology. So in this lecture we will also focus few key applications of the blockchain technology, such as in the area of notary, insurance, private securities and other few interesting non-financial applications. So this is the blockchain technology. The concept of the blockchain is understood by explaining how the Bitcoin works, since it is intrinsically linked to the Bitcoin. So Bitcoin uses cryptographic proof instead of the trust in the third party of two willing parties to execute an online transaction over the internet. So each transaction is sent to a public key of the receiver, digitally signed using a private key of the sender. In order to spend the money, owner of the cryptocurrency needs to prove the ownership of the private key. The entity receiving the digital currency verifies the digital signature, thus the ownership of the corresponding private key on the transaction using the public key of the sender. Whenever the owner has a private key, it will digitally sign the transaction, and this particular transaction is broadcast. On the receiving side, this particular using public key, this particular transaction is verified, and if it is verified that he is the owner who want to do a transaction, then basically the process of chaining the transactions will basically involve, that we are going to see. So each transaction is broadcast to every node in a Bitcoin network and is then recorded in a public ledger after verification. So every transaction needs to be verified for validity before it is recorded in a public ledger. Verifying node needs to ensure two things before recording any transaction. Spender owns the cryptocurrency, it has to digitally sign, and spender has sufficient cryptocurrency in his account, checking every transaction against the spender's account to make sure that he has sufficient. Now the question of maintaining the order of these transactions broadcast to every other node in the peer-to-peer network. The transactions do not come in the order in which they are normally generated because of delays in the network. Hence, there is a need for a system to make sure that double spending of a cryptocurrency does not occur. If there are various peers and if the message is broadcast, it may happen that this particular transaction may reach earlier than other transactions. So the ordering is not basically guaranteed at all the peers, but what happens is majority of the peers of this particular ordering is basically taken care, and the double spending of a cryptocurrency can be avoided in using the distributed consensus. So double spending due to the propagation delays in the peer-to-peer network, I explained. Double spending means, so there means two transactions are started user, and it may so happen that they are being received at different instant of time, but it will be basically ordered using the distributed consensus. Hence, only one transaction will be basically used, and double spending will be avoided using this particular concept of distributed consensus. So Bitcoin solved this problem by a mechanism that is now popularly known as blockchain technology. So the transactions in one block are considered to have happened at the same point of time. These blocks are linked to each other like a chain in a proper linear and chronological order, with every block containing a hash of the previous blocks. So this particular timestamp is maintained in the form of a blockchain that is shown over here. Bitcoin solves this particular problem by introducing a mathematical puzzle. So each block will be accepted in the blockchain provided it contains an answer to a very special mathematical problem, which is also called a proof of work. Noting a block need to prove that it has put enough computing resources to solve a mathematical puzzle. So for instance, a node can be required to find out nonce, which when hashed with the transactions and hash of previous blocks produces a hash with a certain number of leading zeros. As I mentioned earlier, that finding out this particular nonce is a computationally very expensive, it requires a lot of CPU and the energy resources, and the node which is called a miner who calculates first will get the incentive for this particular purpose. So the transaction order is protected by the race, here the mathematical race to protect the transactions. Very small probability that more than one block will be generated in the system at a given time. First node to solve the problem broadcasts the blocks to the rest of the network, and that is accepted. Occasionally, however, more than one blocks will be solved at the same time, leading to several possible branches. However, the math of solving is very complicated, and hence the blockchain quickly stabilizes, meaning that every node in the agreement about the ordering of the blocks a few back from the end of the chain. So the nodes donating their computing resources to find out the no-ones are called miner nodes, and they are financially awarded to obtain the no-ones and basically continue informing the longest proof of work chain. So network only accepts the longest blockchain as the valid one, hence it is next to impossible for an attacker to find out that. This particular example shows that the attacker must outpace or out of luck the network effort, which is becoming impossible as the chain length increases. The existing market, blockchain technology is finding application both in financial and non-financial areas that we have already discussed. There are some open companies like Ethereum and Codias are enabling smart contracts, so they are already available in the literature. So there are alternative blockchain in the system of using blockchain algorithm to achieve distributed consensus on a particular digital asset. They may share miners with a parent network such as bitcoins, and this is called a merge mining. Coins is an open source protocol that describes the class of methods for developer to create digital asset on top of Bitcoin blockchain by using its functionalities beyond the digital currency. There are various applications we have already touched upon in the beginning. Another application is about the decentralized storage. Cloud file storage solutions such as Dropbox, Google Drive and OneDrive are growing popularity to store documents, photos, videos, music files. Despite their popularity, cloud file storage solutions typically face challenges in the areas such as security, privacy and data control. The major issue is that one has to trust the third party with one's confidential file. Hence, there is another solution which is called decentralized IoTs. IoTs are increasingly becoming popular technology in both consumer and enterprise space. Vast majority of IoT platforms are based on centralized model in which as broker or hub controls the interaction between the devices. However, this approach can become impractical in many situations and need to exchange data between themselves autonomously. So blockchain technology facilitates this decentralization of IoT in IoT platforms. So there are many applications which is basically we have summarized in the form of this particular slides. So there are reading materials available, blockchain technology beyond Bitcoin, so that you can refer. Conclusion: blockchain is the technology backbone of Bitcoin. The distributed ledger functionality coupled with security of blockchain makes it very attractive technology to solve the current financial as well as non-financial business problems. There is enormous interest in blockchain based business applications, and hence numerous startups working on it. Large financial institutions like Visa, MasterCard are investing in exploring applications of the current business model of blockchain. In fact, some of them are searching for the new business models in the world of blockchain. It is envisioned that blockchain will go through slow adoption due to the risk associated. Most of the startup will fail with few winners. Thank you.